Next week, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Trump's pick for Health and Human Services Secretary, will meet with senators on Capitol Hill, and he'll spend about 4 days trying to win them over ahead of his confirmation. He has a bit of an uphill battle, though. Clearly, he has name recognition, but there's a new poll by the Associated Press and Nork Center for Public Affairs. It shows 4 in 10 Americans disapprove of this selection of Kennedy. Overall, 30% say they strongly or somewhat approve, 14% say they neither approve or disapprove, and 42% say they strongly or somewhat disapprove. 14 said they didn't know enough to say. Alexander Bolton is with us, senior staff writer for our partners at The Hill. How tough might senators be on him in this first round of meetings before the confirmation?
Good morning. There is going to be some skepticism about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., specifically his pledge to take on the agricultural industry, genetically modified crops. He's also pledged to take on the corn syrup industry. You know, that really puts him at odds with Republican senators like Chuck Grassley of Iowa, Joni Ernst, also of Iowa. That state has a huge corn industry, huge agriculture industry. And as Grassley recently told reporters, you know, he said that he argued that genetically modified crops has really increased yield per acre. So it's a lot of money at stake for agribusinesses, for family farms. So that's something that the senators are going to challenge Kennedy on. Now, the one thing that Kennedy does have going in his favor is that poll you cited reported that 6 in 10 Republicans approve of Kennedy. So he is more popular among the Republican base than 2 of Trump's other controversial nominees, specifically Pete Hegseth to head the Department of Defense and Tulsi Gabbard to serve as Director of National Intelligence. They are much less popular with the Republican base, and so they probably face tougher roads to confirmation on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about Hegseth in a moment, but staying on Kennedy for just one more question here. How much has he done to explain some of his thoughts on these issues to the American public, and how does that factor into the equation for those on Capitol Hill?
Well, you know, he has talked broadly about many issues, but I think where he is resonating is his calls to address chronic disease, chronic illness by getting Americans to eat healthier, phasing out processed foods and things that are not good for them, while his stance on genetically modified foods is certainly controversial on Capitol Hill. His calls to phase out processed foods, to get Americans to eat healthier, to have Americans pay more attention to their health before they get sick. I mean, those are uncontroversial opinions, and they're even getting some bipartisan support, in particular Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey. He's cheered Kennedy's talk about getting Americans to eat healthier and to live healthier lives. So, it's a mixed bag, but certainly where he's most controversial is his skepticism of vaccines. And that is something that he's going to have to explain to senators when he meets them on Capitol Hill next week.
And has he done enough explaining on that particular issue so far?
I don't think so. And, this is an issue that is wrapped in controversy. The media cites scientists as overwhelmingly supporting vaccines and really, minimizing the problems, potential safety problems posed by preservatives. But there is a strong following that Kennedy has who think that vaccines are linked to autism. Now, there doesn't seem to be, or doesn't appear to be, really solid scientific evidence showing that there is a link between autism and vaccines. In fact, Bill Cassidy, the top Republican on the Senate Health Committee, has called that junk science. But that is something that is certainly a contentious issue in America, and many Americans are not buying Kennedy's skeptical views of vaccines and his claims that they possibly could pose health risks and maybe even be linked to autism.
And finally, Alexander, on the issue of Pete Hegseth, only 2 in 10 Americans say they approve of him as defense secretary in Trump's cabinet. What do you think will be his biggest hurdle between now and these hearings?
Well, the real question for Hegseth is whether his accusers.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.